pressure cooker programs. We put this out onto the Twitter sphere. At JD Piquel is where I posted this question, so follow me there if you haven't already. But I threw this question out there and said, what programs are facing the most pressure heading into 2023? Now, this does not necessarily mean hot seat. It could mean pressure to get some ROI from what we've expected from you in the past. It could mean pressure to achieve a certain standard that you hold internally that may be different than other teams around the country. Notice I said programs. I did not say programs. Those of you that know, all right? So I'm not going to waste too much time. And we got a lot of different responses from y'all. But I want to pair that, the responses that is on the Twitter page, to some of our own thoughts that we have around these different teams. And here are the teams that I think have the most pressure to perform in 2023. And the response that we got probably the most is the Texas Longhorns. The Texas Longhorns, to me, are at a point where they're starting to really need some ROI. We need to have some return on investment from what we've seen so far during the Steve Sarkisian era. And 2023 is supposed to be the year, and I think year it could mean a lot of different things, but you got 10 of 11 starters coming back on offense. You have the quarterback in Quinn Ewers, who had a ton of buzz and a ton of hype when he came out of high school, went to Ohio State, and decided he wanted to come back home and play for the home state Longhorns. And now it's sort of the time where, okay, you had your 1 year to figure it out, whether it be Steve Sarkisian and the culture and Quinn Ewers and the offense. Like, now it's the year where we need to see something if we're the Texas faithful. And to accentuate matters even more, who's the favorite in the Big 12 Conference? Like, who is just the far and away team that's got that conference by the throat? I understand TCU just played for a national championship, but guess what? They didn't win the thing. They didn't win the thing. And even if they had, Max Duggan's not coming back. Quentin Johnson, he's not coming back. They lose some key pieces as well. So it is a free-for-all within the Big 12 Conference, and that only further proves the point that Texas has a tremendous opportunity and a tremendous amount of pressure to get it done this coming year. And when I say get it done, I'm not saying win the Big 12 Conference. I think that would be a welcome sight if that happened. But we need to see a little bit more of a continued trend in the right direction. I think for Texas, I've said this before, I think appearing in Jerry World for that conference title game, that alone would be a success to me. If you win it, great, but that alone would be a success to me because Texas has put so much into it on the recruiting trail. They got a top 3 class right now. From a resources perspective, they have been active, it sounds like, in the NIL space in terms of being competitive there. They have some of the best facilities in the country. Like, they've put a lot into it right now. Now we want some ROI. Now we want to see something on the field that matches what we're putting into it. It's like if you go to the gym and you just consistently show up, you do the right things, you have nutrition right, you're doing the right exercises. And if you don't build muscle, you might go to a different gym. You're going to find a different way to do things. I think this is the year, the prove-it year for Texas. That's why there's so much pressure because of what they're putting into it. If you're not yet subscribed, like I said, we have content every single day for y'all. This is a college football community that y'all have equipped us to cultivate. And we're so glad to have you here. So if you haven't yet joined the party, now's the time. Also, follow me on the social channels to answer questions like this and join the conversation at JD Piquel on Twitter and on Instagram. The next team to me that I think is under a ton of pressure is the Ohio State Buckeyes. We've talked about the Buckeyes a fair amount on this platform, and they have a very unique standard. And if you're a Buckeye fan, you know what I mean when I say standard. Beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, play for a national title. The last 2 years for Ryan Day and Ohio State, they are 0 for 2. Now, with that being said, they've still won double-digit games. They still have a college football playoff appearance and are a missed field goal away from playing for a national title. But still, that's not going to cut it. Ohio State, to me, is very much so like that extremely intelligent kid with really strict parents. Really strict parents. Like, he gets a 3.8 GPA and you're fired up if it's someone else in the class. For him, he's losing phone privileges. He's probably not able to hang out for a few weeks. He doesn't get the car. Like, That's the standard. It is 4.0 GPA for Ohio State or bust. They expect more in Columbus. And now, having missed the mark for the last 2 years, having gotten that 3.8 GPA, really good for most people, not good enough in Columbus. Now it's a matter of, okay, there's going to be a little bit more pressure. There's a little bit more of a edge of your seat feel if you're in Columbus. And that feel around Ryan Day. Hey, was he actually born on third base? Like Jim Harbaugh was saying? I mean, at first it kind of just seemed like outlandish rivalry speak, but now people are starting to look left and right and saying, yeah, well, the standard has to be met. And is it fair? For a lot of other programs, probably not. For Ohio State, similar to Texas, you put enough into it, you recruit competitively enough for that to be what you expect. Just kind of the way that is. So Ohio State, a ton of pressure to achieve that 4.0 GPA, to win a national title, to win the Big Ten, to beat Michigan. That is the standard. Now, another response that we got a lot of in the Twitter sphere was the Texas A&M Aggies, the good folks in College Station. I love College Station. Heck, I worked in College Station for a hot minute for a news station out there, KBTX. Shout out KBTX and news people everywhere. But Texas A&M has recruited very, very well over the past few years. Check this out. 4-6-7-1. Y'all, that's not the last four to my social. That is the recruiting class rankings for Texas A&M since 2019. In 2023, right now, they currently sit at 15. Why is that? You're starting to see, on the field at least, Texas A&M hasn't lived up to the billing. It's just like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. With great recruiting comes great expectations for your football team. And Jimbo Fisher and A&M so far have not been able to perform up to that billing. Now, I credit Jimbo Fisher for this. And people say maybe he was having his hand forced, maybe someone made him do this. Regardless, credit to him for making it happen. Hired Bobby Petrino to take over the offense, to fix what they weren't doing well on that side of the football. They were one of the worst teams in the country offensively this past year. Now, some of that could do with the revolving door they had at quarterback, and they ended up playing a freshman in Connor Weigman, but still not nearly good enough. Bring in some outside help. That's a humbling thing to do if you're Jimbo Fisher and the offense is your baby and calling plays is kind of your MO, and one of the reasons why you got the job at Texas A&M as the head coach and why they pay you as much as they do. If they don't win 8 games next year, I think there's going to be a lot louder murmuring. I'm not saying Jimbo Fisher gets fired. I'm not saying anything quite as extreme as that happens. I suppose it could, but I would be surprised. I think if they don't win 8 games and show significant improvement with how well they have recruited, even with the transfer portal exodus, I think there will be some folks that are a little bit more high volume with their unhappiness in powerful positions in College Station. So keep an eye on that, but Texas A&M undoubtedly have very high expectations from what they've garnered on the recruiting trail. And when you recruit as well as they have, the pressure is warranted. So time to perform if you're Texas A&M. I got a little ACC bundle for you here for these last two. Clemson and Florida State, I think, have tremendous pressure for different reasons. We'll start with Clemson. I've always said this. Clemson to me is Chick-fil-A. Do things a different way. They do their recruiting a little bit different. They take their visits a little bit different historically. They don't really go to the transfer portal that consistently. Up until the hiring of Garrett Riley, they hired their staff differently. Same thing with Chick-fil-A. Closed on Sundays, a little bit of a different tempo within that restaurant and how clean they keep it and what they operate under. And you're great with it for Chick-fil-A because they continue to give you the best chicken sandwich that's on the market, for my money. Maybe I'm biased, but that's how I feel about Chick-fil-A. So I'm cool with them being closed on Sundays. That has been the same thing with Clemson. You're fine with them doing the visits the way they do it. You're fine with them not going to the portal because up until very recently, playing for college football playoffs, playing for national titles, that was what they had delivered. That was the product they had put before you. To be fair, Dabo Swinney is the one who set that bar in Clemson, South Carolina. It wasn't always that way at Clemson, but he has now raised the bar, raised the standard to that level. Now, the last couple of seasons, That hasn't been the case. They won the ACC last year, didn't look great in the Orange Bowl, didn't make the college football playoff. The product historically has been a little bit better. So the pressure on Dabo Swinney, I think, is, okay, prove yet again that your way works as college football continues to evolve. Prove to us being the fan base and the college football public, that the way that you do things is good enough to win a national championship. Now, I think they have the roster to compete for a college football playoff. The receiver position, to me, is a question mark in terms of how explosive they can be, but you got the quarterback in Cade Klubnik, got a lot of pieces on defense. Like, the roster is in a position to where they could be competitive to that degree. But if they don't get it done, if the product isn't up to par, it's not Chick-fil-A, original chicken sandwich kind of standard, there's going to be some murmuring. Now, hear me very clearly. Dabo Swinney's not getting fired, but there would be, I think, some pressure on the program as a whole. So the pressure to perform and to reach the standard you have set at Clemson, South Carolina, and the way that you do things is why there is that pressure. Because if he's going to the portal and overhauling his class and doing all the things that we've seen in modern college football, if he was kind of going with that trend, maybe the volume's a little bit more turned down. But you have a lot of people around college football saying, Dabo Swinney, why don't you adapt? Now, I don't want to traffic in that too much because I trust Dabo Swinney, to be honest with you, but there's a lot of pressure in Clemson, South Carolina. Second team, like I mentioned, Florida State. They have pressure for a different reason. The pressure for them is you're on the doorstep of winning the ACC. You bring back Jared Verse. You bring back your quarterback in Jordan Travis. You've been building this thing for 3 years. You've been building the Death Star for 3 years in Tallahassee. And now, having won 10 games in year 3, in year 4, it's, okay, let's take over now. We've been knocking on the door for a minute. We knocked on the door last year. Let's kick that thing down, man. Let's claim the crown in the ACC. And if not now, then when? If not when Jordan Travis is here, then when? If not in year 4 of the Mike Norvell era, when we've built to this, then when is it going to happen? As Clemson brings in a new OC, as Clemson brings in a new quarterback. If not now, then when? So I think the pressure in terms of the moment and the way it's ramped up to this is why there's pressure on Florida State. So pressure for different reasons, but pressure within the ACC nonetheless. So we kind of brainstormed together on this one, but the programs with the most pressure for my money, Texas. It's got to be an ROI year for the good folks in Austin. Ohio State. It's like the really smart kid. If you don't get a 4.0 GPA, if you don't beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, play for Natties, then we might have to have some other conversations. Texas A&M. With great power, with great recruiting, comes great responsibility. Both Jimbo Fisher and Peter Parker can relate. For Clemson and Florida State, there's pressure. For Clemson, it is you do things differently, and because of that, we expect you to achieve the product that you have continued to achieve over the last couple of years. For Florida State, if not now, then when? Year 4, under a head coach who has been building and building and building. Jared Verse is back. Jordan Travis, the quarterback, is back. This has to be the year. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.